Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If this is your first video, hi, I'm Elena, and this is The Organized Money, where we talk about planning life and managing money. In today's video, we are going to be diving into how to budget with inconsistent income. So I have been an entrepreneur for the past 6 years, and during that time, I have had to learn how to budget my money on inconsistent income. Sometimes we will have really good months, sometimes I will have to manage with a little bit less. And so I wanted to dive into this video to show you exactly how I do it and hopefully give you some tips and strategies that will help you if you are currently trying to figure out how to manage inconsistent income and how to use a budget planner to do so. So I currently have my budget planner in front of me. I use my budget planner in order to help me to really stay on top of my money and to see and track my progress throughout the entire month. So on my monthly calendar page is where I will always start. And this is tip number 1, which is to write out all of your bills, all of your expenses for the entire month. So the way that I like to do this is I will write out every bill on the day that it is due, and I will color code. So I like to color code based on paydays, and I pay myself from my business every single week. So every single time I pay myself, the color will change, and the bills that are associated with that particular payday will be in the same color as the paydays. So we have brown, blue, green, and yellow. Doing this as the very first step in your process will help you to see exactly how much you need. This is your survival number. This is your baseline number, because as you can see, I don't have any variable expenses on here. What I have on here are my essential bills, the things that we need in order to keep the household running. So this process helps me to see all of the expenses that we would have to pay and the bare minimum income that I would need in order to cover everything. And when you add all of these expenses up, especially when you do it by payday, you're also able to see how much you need and when you need it. Because in order to be able to manage inconsistent income, the first thing that you need to know is the goal number that you need to make in order to make this work. And if you make over that goal number, how much you need to save when you don't have enough in the future. So write all your numbers down, color code them so that you're able to see how much you need and when you need it. The second step in this process is to create a buffer account. You need at least one buffer account. Now, I have 2 buffer accounts that I will use throughout the course of the month because I use them for different reasons, and I'm going to explain why. But you need at least one. You need an account where you are storing and saving extra money throughout the month for the time when you don't have enough income or you have an additional expense that comes up that you are not prepared to take care of. So I have 2 buffer accounts. I have one business savings account, and then I have a personal account, which is my short-term savings account. Now, I also have a long-term savings account, but that is my actual emergency fund. But my business savings account and my personal short-term savings account are the 2 accounts that I will use when our budget has a shortage. Let's dive into why you need a buffer account and how it can help you. And I'm going to do that by sharing an example of how I had to use both throughout the course of this month. So let's look at my first paycheck for the month. So I knew this very first check that I was going to have a shortage, and that is because I could not pay myself an additional $500 that I normally would. I did not hit a revenue goal that I needed in order to pay myself an additional $500, so I withheld that, knowing that I was going to have to use my business buffer account in order to cover that shortage. So the first thing that I did is write down everything that I actually had. I wrote down what I paid myself. I also wrote down the bank balance that was already in my bill account, and once I added that up, it was $1,033.96. And then I wrote down all of the additional expenses that had to get covered for this particular check. Once I wrote them all down, I realized that I was going to be $1,048.17 that I was going to need in order to cover all of my expenses. This was not including food or any personal expenses, any car expenses, and so I had to write those down separately. I wrote down food, which our groceries was going to be $300, personal expenses because it was some things that came up for the kids, and that was $100, gas for the car was $60, and then I had just money that we was just going to have in our pocket $40. So this total brought me to $1,548.17. That was a shortage for this particular week. This was the budget side. What did I actually end up doing? If you see, I have transfer from savings here, and I transferred $567 from my business savings account. And the reason why I did this is because it was an income shortage. Whenever I don't hit my income goal and I cannot cover my personal pay, or I can't pay myself what I normally would, I had to take a reduction in pay, then I would pull that amount from my business savings account, because the business savings account is the one that covers my income shortage. And so I transferred $567, which brought this total to $1,600. And then I paid all of the bills that I needed to pay. However, there was one that I did not have to pay at that time. So now when I transferred this amount from my business savings, it actually brought me to a negative $105. So where did I get the money for this $105 and my variable expenses? Because my variable expenses is the money that I'm using to actually spend throughout the week. I actually used my personal short-term savings account for this amount, because this was like an additional $600 that I needed in order to cover everything else that we needed to spend throughout the course of the week. So this was an income shortage, but even if I would have paid myself the additional $500, it was not going to be enough to cover all of the bills and to cover all of my variable expenses. So I used my personal short-term savings account in order to cover those. Now, you could have one buffer account where you just put all of the money in there and use that one buffer account in order to cover both. I like to do it this way because it lets me see if it is an expense issue that I might have or an income issue that I might have. And so for this one, it was a little bit of both, because I normally would be able to divide up my expenses a little bit more throughout the course of the month so they wouldn't be so heavy at the beginning of the month. But because we had some other expenses come up at the end of last month, it kind of threw off the budget, and I knew that it was going to do so. So I ended up pulling from my business savings and from my personal savings in order to cover the income shortage and the additional expenses that we had. So at the bottom here, I did my $0 check, and this is where I can see how much of a shortage I had. Based on my budget, I thought my shortage was going to be $1,548.17, but it was actually $1,172. And so this is the amount that I will need to replace in savings. Now, 567 of it is from my business account, and then the other 605 is actually from my personal short-term savings account. When I make more, when I make extra, when I have a really good month, what I will do is start replacing that amount. I will stash as much as I can to replace this number. And this is the part of inconsistent income, is you have to have some type of buffer account in order for it to work. And you have to monitor, what are your best months? What are your worst months? What is your average income? And how can I save and stash when we have a really good month? Now, of course, this is going to take some discipline, because when you have a good month, you have an urge to kind of splurge and have a little bit of fun with your money, in which you can definitely do that in small increments. But when you are on inconsistent income, you definitely have to be very careful. So let me show you another example. This one, I ended up having to do it again, but it was for a different reason. For this check, I was able to pay myself everything that I would normally pay myself. The bank balance at that time was $89.16. We were able to cover all of the bills, but I had an additional bill that came in. It was a pest control bill, but it is an annual bill that will come in around this time. So when that bill came, I actually ended up moving the exact amount that I need. And since this was an expense, I took this out of my personal buffer account instead of my business one, because this didn't have anything to do with my income. I paid myself exactly what I normally would from my business account, but I had an additional expense that I was not expecting. And I will replace it in the future. So when I get extra money from my business, I will always stash some money within my business savings account, and within my personal savings account, I do usually add that within my budget, where I am putting money into my long-term emergency account, I am putting money into my investment account, and I am also always putting back money into my short-term savings account. And this is the main thing about having inconsistent income. The biggest part is you still have to budget. Even if you don't like the numbers or they are negative, you still need to write down the numbers and still see where you are, even if it's not where you want to be. Because how will you know how much more you need to actually make or what adjustments you could possibly take if you don't actually write down the numbers? And when you have inconsistent income, just know your budget can't be rigid. It is not going to follow a solid plan. It has to be very flexible. You have to be able to flow and adjust with your numbers, because your income is flowing and adjusting. So your budget has to flow with the income. And the additional things that you definitely want to have is in your long-term savings account, we want to have at least 6 to 9 months of just an emergency fund. That is just in case anything ever happens to your income and you can't work at all, or you're not making any money. You have at least 9 months of money in order to cover all of your bills while you figure it out. The second thing that you want to work on, though, is having like a month or 2 months of a buffer account. I like to also call my short-term savings account a 1 month ahead account. And if you are looking to try and create that 1 month ahead goal and it seems so far-fetched for you, then I will link a video above that I did a while ago on how I created my 1 month ahead account. Within that video, it will give you some tips on how you can create that 1 month ahead account and how you can have a savings account that helps you out throughout the month when you have inconsistent income. And my last big tip that I will give you today is to make sure that you are never banking on money that you don't have yet. Don't try and manage or create a budget based on money that isn't in your hand yet. You want to base it off of a modest income, off of what you would normally get, off of your average, and not what you think you're going to get in the future, especially if it's not something that has been happening for the last 6 months. So if my income isn't keeping up, and it isn't keeping up for about 3 months, then I start to adjust the entire plan, because now I might be falling into my income has drastically changed and I need to find another revenue stream or another source of income. But there's a big difference between 1 or 2 paycheck slump and a drastic change in our income that we have to change our entire strategy and our entire budget. So make sure you are monitoring your income on a consistent basis to make sure it's not always short, because if it's always short, then you will have to adjust your entire strategy, because over time you will run out of money in your buffer account. But I hope that this video has helped you, especially if you have inconsistent income like me. If you do have any additional questions or anything that you are trying to work through with your budget planner with inconsistent income, please let me know. I would love to help you. Oh, and before I go, I just wanted to remind you that Vlogmas is coming up. Vlogmas is 25 videos where I will post every single day from the 1st of December to the 25th of December. And in those videos, I am talking about how to organize your life. So it's an entire video series that I do every single year that helps you to organize your entire life, from your personal space to your time management to your money and your home. We talk about it all within this series. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm so excited. It's my favorite series of the entire year and I can't wait to get started. So make sure that you subscribe to my channel if you're not already subscribed, so that you can see when those videos start to post. So guys, I hope that this video has helped you, and I will see you all in my next one. Until then, keep organizing your life so that you can achieve your dreams. Bye guys.